Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everybody. My name is MiAh the King, and have you heard the rumor about butter? Never mind, I shouldn't be spreading it. Now then, today we're taking a look at a game just released on Steam called Tactical Breach Wizards, a turn-based strategy tactical game based on storytelling where you play as special forces who happen to be wizards in a world full of wizards. Well, that's unique, I'll give it that. Developed and published by Suspicious Development Inc., released not in early access, and selling for $20. So what is this game? Well, it's hard for me to describe it in my familiar way. It plays close to XCOM, but they say that on the Steam store page that it's not an XCOM game. It also plays similar to roguelike games, but they say it's not a roguelike game. So what is it? Well, basically in this game, you take control of a random group of misfit wizards who used to serve together or know each other or want to help each other, each one with different backgrounds and all coming together for one ever-reaching goal of stopping the particular bad guy at that point in time. Instead of fancy skills like you get in a lot of tactical breach games or tactical games in general, like throw grenades or snipe or use med kits, etc., you instead get magical abilities, like throwing a gale grenade, using Overwatch to sneak snipe your enemies with your wizard sniper rifle, and chain lightning to push even the most stubborn of mini-bosses right out the damn window. I would name a particular story or character, but they change as you progress from mission to mission. The main mission seems to be a rogue agent is on the loose, and this rogue agent's past partner is there to track her down and stop her. That's the main story, I think. All in hopes of stopping World War V. There you go, there's the gist of the story. So now, as always, let's dive right into the good and the bad. The first positive point that I'd like to talk about is the sound design. Now, there's no voice acting, by the way, not even partially, but the sound effects are great. When it needs to sound like a gun or an explosion or glass breaking, it sounds realistic. When it needs to sound mystical and magical for the spells you cast, they too have their own realistic sounding effects to make it sound as, well, you'd expect it to sound. Then you've got the music, which works really well, and it's varied enough to keep it interesting. It's also loud enough to not be drowned out, but subtle enough to not overwhelm the actions you're seeing on the screen. I honestly think the sound design here was spot on amazing. Next up for the positives is the gameplay. So here's how it works. It's turn-based, obviously, and each turn you have a certain amount of action points to do stuff. Move behind cover, shoot that guy, help a teammate, breach a door with magical glyphs, pick up intelligence files, or even cast spells. So far, pretty standard for a tactical turn-based game like I've seen done a million times before. However, in this game, they offer you another distinct advantage and unique gameplay component of having one of your main characters be a seer-based wizard. You know, a seer, you know what that is, right? Which means he can see briefly into the future. This gives you a mechanic that allows you to foresee the future consequences of your actions. It also allows you to rewind quite a ways back to the beginning of your turn, no matter how far forward you have progressed in that turn, as long as you just don't end the turn. So this allows you to see the future of what's going to happen in that battle and help you change, plan, and ultimately achieve victory in each battle. The game moves in stages. Each mission contains several mini-levels where you have to accomplish objectives for each mini-level until you finish all of them and accomplish the big level. After which, and sometimes during, you'll get these little dialogues between the characters, and where you'll take over the dialogue randomly of one of the characters, picking what they say, but it doesn't have any lasting consequences, so just pick whatever you want. You'll also see a map pop up every now and then with these little pictures, text descriptors, and threads that the game wants you to connect the pictures to, like in those old school detective shows or movies where, you know, they got the map or they got all the pictures on the wall and they're trying to make all those connections or whatever. It does absolutely nothing, but hey, it was interesting and gives you a little bit more information about what you're dealing with. There's also a level-based system and a confidence-based system. So the level-based system is where you'd expect your characters gain XP with victories, and then eventually they'll get enough XP to gain a level, they get a perk, you can use that to unlock new powers or power up older ones, and they've got the confidence system, which it basically gives you optional objectives for each character in each mission, and if you gain enough confidence points, then you can change the appearance of your characters. So that was interesting, I guess. But yeah, it's basically just breach a room, clear that room, accomplish the objectives in that room, here's some quirky dialogue, rinse and repeat for about 8 hours or so. I would normally say funny or interesting dialogue, but I personally didn't find it very funny or interesting. But overall, I think the gameplay was fun and addicting. Next up for the positives is the stability. The game ran great. I mean, it was very smooth, very responsive, very accurate, and the controls worked and made sense. Playing the game felt like it should feel every time you buy a brand new released game. You know, where everything's working and nothing is broken and everything looks the way it's supposed to look. Like, it ran smooth as silk wrapped around butter. And last but not least for the positives is the price tag and the user interface. The UI was definitely interesting and detailed, but not overly complicated. It was easy to navigate, easy to understand, and looked good as well as felt good as you were playing the game. For the price tag, Well, it's perfectly priced. In my opinion, games should give you at least a solid hour of gameplay for each $5 you're paying. So if you give me a 4-hour long game for $20, fully finished and flushed out, and not broken, then that's a good deal. And this game gives you at least 8 hours of fun, and that's not even talking about replaying it, going back and playing earlier missions to complete the side objectives and getting those confidence points that we so desperately need so I can make sure my wizard is dressed in black and not white. But that's about all the positives I got to say about the game, and now we got to go on to the negatives. But before that, a quick word from me. I humbly ask for your assistance to help the growth of my channel, especially if you found this video entertaining or informative. It takes you very little time and very little effort, but hey, it helps me out a lot. So, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing, and hitting that bell. Thank you. Now then, on to the negatives. Before I go into these, keep in mind these are all my personal opinion. The truth is that I wasn't really able to find anything inherently wrong with the gameplay or the design of the game. So here's just a few things that I personally didn't like with the game, and maybe you'll feel the same, maybe you won't, but regardless, I try to be honest, so here's what I didn't like. The first one is the graphics, and a lot of people probably won't agree with me, but I just didn't like the graphics here. There's not enough attention to detail to give it a serious or interesting feel, and with lower tier graphics like these, I'd hope for at least more details to certain objects or people, or at least in close-ups or something, but it just wasn't there. The color design is fine, as is the contrast, and overall it's not bad, but there was just something about it that rubbed me the wrong way. Next thing I'd like to talk about is the gameplay loop, the linear, predictable direction it's flowing. I mean, it's literally the same thing over and over and over again. After the first 4 missions, I was pretty much done. It just felt really samey and repetitive, but not in a good way. Sure, as I get more wizards unlocked or more maps unlocked, it'll probably vary up the gameplay a bit, but it'll still basically be the same thing over and over again. I mean, the devs really liked the idea of throwing people out of windows because it's a main component in the game, and it's an easy way to defeat enemies. And there's windows in almost every level. You can even throw bosses out of windows and one-shot them. Like, they're just so proud of this idea of shoving people out of windows that they're throwing this idea at you left and right. But you don't even get any funny sound effects for doing it, or any buffs or bonuses or positives or perk points or anything for doing it, other than really just one-shotting the enemies, which you can pretty much already do without the windows. Like, your guys are already strong enough that they can shoot them and kill them in one hit. You don't need to throw them out windows. It's just a funny little gag, I guess. I mean, for the stronger enemies it works great, but I don't know, it just, they even mentioned it during dialogue because they just thought it was so funny, I guess. But I personally won't buy a game just because one of your mechanics is throwing people out of windows. A mechanic which is similar to a bunch of other mechanics that other people have done, like throwing people in this or tossing them out that or kicking them out here. Like, I've seen it done a million times. I don't get why this is such a big deal in this game. And last but not least, I didn't really like the writing. Like, it felt like it was trying too hard to be serious or trying too hard to be funny, but it just wasn't coming across as either. Now, maybe it's just not my sense of humor, because a lot of people online really seem to think this game is hilarious, but I just don't. To me, it was kind of boring and uninteresting and predictable and cringe. So, yeah. But I don't really have anything negative that I can say about the game other than my personal preferences. I mean, it's well designed in almost every regard, that even with nitpicking or even going to the extreme of how I could take a small thing and turn it into a big thing, even doing that, I could still only come up with things that I personally didn't like. What are my final thoughts? Well, here's the thing. You got to look at this less like it's an action game or a strategy game and more like it's a puzzler game. Each level is a puzzle, and you have to figure out how to accomplish all objectives within a certain number of moves using certain spells and abilities to reach the maximum objective and win the mission while not losing a single person. And while I personally didn't like the style of the writing, the quality of the writing was good. While I personally didn't like the graphics quality, they also aren't doing anything wrong and nothing's broken or ugly here. While I personally was finding the gameplay too boring and repetitive, that's the whole idea of the game, and it's not doing anything wrong inherently either. So this is not a game for me, obviously. However, if I take a neutral, objective point of view here, I can say that this game is very well designed. It's cohesive, it's coherent, it's smooth, it's stable, it's in-depth, and it's interesting for its fan base. And overall, I think the devs did a really good job creating this game. It's not for me, and I think that's a fair point, but it might be for you. And if you're interested in this game even a little bit, and if it looks fun, or if you're up for the challenge, then this game is perfectly reasonable for you to try out. I mean, it's not broken, it's not buggy, and it's not badly designed or overpriced. It's designed as good as you'd want it to be. So my recommendation is that if you're even a little bit interested in the game, then you should definitely give it a shot. Like I said, it's well crafted, not broken, not expensive. So in other words, if this is your kind of thing, I really hope you have fun, and it's definitely worth it. All right, everybody? All right, so that's all the time I got for today's video. Thanks so much for watching, with a special thanks to those of you who stuck around to the end. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I can't wait to see you all again on my next adventure. So until then, I bid you all farewell.